So you've probably heard someone say Copilot and Cowork and Scout all in the same sentence. And honestly, it sounds like alphabet soup. Is Scout just another Copilot, or is it something completely different? That's the question we're answering today. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what Scout is, how it's different from the other Microsoft AI tools, and why it actually matters, all in plain English, no jargon. We'll start with the Copilot family tree so you can see where Scout fits, then dive into what makes it unique. The Copilot family tree. Most people think Microsoft has one AI assistant, one thing called Copilot that lives inside Word and Teams, but that's not the full picture anymore. Microsoft now has 3 distinct layers of AI, and understanding them is the key to understanding Scout. The first layer is just called Copilot. This is the one you probably already know. It's the on-demand helper. You ask it something, it answers. You say, summarize this email, and it does. It lives inside Word, Excel, Teams, and Outlook. It's fast, it's helpful, and it's always waiting for you to start the conversation. Think of it like a colleague at the next desk who's happy to help, but only when you ask. The second layer is called Cowork. This one is newer. Cowork is the task executor. You hand it a multi-step job, like research these 3 competitors and build me a comparison document. And it goes off and does it in the cloud. It doesn't need you to hold its hand through every step. It plans, it executes, and it comes back with a result. Think of Cowork like a temp worker who takes your shopping list and returns with everything on it. You gave the instructions, they did the work. Then there's the third layer. This is the new category Microsoft calls Autopilot. And Scout is the first example of it. Here's the key distinction you need to remember. Copilot and Cowork both wait for you to initiate. You start the conversation, you give the task. Scout doesn't wait. It watches, it monitors, it acts on its own. Let me give you an analogy that makes this crystal clear. Copilot is a colleague at the next desk who helps when called. Cowork is a temp who takes your shopping list and returns with everything. But Scout is the building manager who's already fixing the leak before you even notice there's water on the floor. They didn't ask, they just saw the problem and handled it. So if Scout is the always-on one, what does that actually look like in practice? What Scout actually is. Here's the simplest definition. Scout is a desktop agent that monitors your work and acts on its own, without being asked. It's a local app that runs on your PC, either Windows 11 or Mac OS. You talk to it through a chat window or through Teams, but the key word is autonomous. It doesn't need a prompt to start working. This is where Scout really separates itself from everything else Microsoft has built. It has its own digital identity through something called Entra ID. Think of it as a virtual employee with its own login and permissions. It's not acting as you, it's acting as itself, on your behalf, and that matters for security. You can control exactly what Scout is allowed to do. Every action it takes is logged. If it sends an email, that's recorded. If it reads a file, that's recorded too. Administrators can audit everything. Scout connects to 3 worlds. First, Microsoft 365, your email, calendar, Teams chats, and SharePoint files. Second, your local machine, files, folders, and even commands it can run on your PC. Third, the web. It can drive a browser, navigate websites, and perform actions like filling out forms or scraping data. The best way to think about Scout is like having a personal assistant who never sleeps. They keep an eye on your inbox and your calendar. They notice patterns in your work. And they quietly prepare what you need next. A meeting brief, a daily summary, a reminder about something you're about to forget. You didn't ask, they just did it. That sounds powerful, right? But what's the actual difference compared to Copilot and Cowork? Let's draw a clear line between them so there's no confusion. The Autopilot versus Copilot distinction. Microsoft is now drawing a hard line between 2 categories, and this is where most of the confusion disappears. On one side, you have Copilot, which includes both regular Copilot and Cowork. On the other side, you have Autopilot, and Scout is the first example. Here's the simplest way to tell them apart. Copilot is always initiated by you. You ask a question, it responds. You give a task, it executes. It's a 2-way conversation that starts when you decide to start it. Autopilot is the opposite. Scout initiates. It watches your workflow patterns, notices what's happening, and acts proactively. You don't start the conversation, it does. There are 3 key differences to remember, and they make everything clear. First, the cue. Copilot needs a prompt. You type something, you click something, you say something. Without that, Copilot sits there doing nothing. Scout doesn't need a prompt. It acts on a schedule or a trigger. You set it to check your inbox every morning at 7 a.m., and it does. No reminder needed. Second, the identity. When Copilot acts, it acts as you. It uses your permissions, your access, your identity. When Scout acts, it has its own identity. It's a separate digital worker with its own permissions. That might sound like a small technical detail, but it's huge for security. You can give Scout limited access, read emails but don't send them, view files but don't delete them, without affecting your own permissions at all. Third, the persistence. Copilot stops when the chat closes. Close the window, the conversation ends. Scout runs in the background 24/7. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't take weekends off. You set an automation to run every hour, and it runs every hour, even when your laptop is closed. Here's a concrete example. With Copilot, you type, summarize my emails from yesterday. It does it, you get the summary, conversation over. With Scout, you set it once. Every morning at 8, scan my inbox for urgent messages and deliver a brief. From that point on, it just happens. You don't ask, you don't prompt. The brief appears in your chat every morning like clockwork. This is not just a minor upgrade to Copilot. It's a fundamental shift in how AI works with you. Copilot is a tool you use. Scout is an agent that works alongside you. Now that you understand the what and the why different, let's look at what Scout can actually do for you in your daily work. What Scout can actually do. Let's get concrete. What does Scout actually do for you in your daily work? Here are the real-world examples that make this tangible. Meeting preparation. You've got a meeting in an hour with a client you haven't spoken to in 3 months. Instead of digging through your inbox, your Teams chat history, and your SharePoint folders trying to remember what you discussed last time, Scout does that work for you. It pulls the relevant emails, the documents you shared, the chat threads from that project. Then it generates a one-page brief, context, open items, key decisions, and hands it to you. No manual searching, no frantic scrolling at 8:55 a.m. Inbox triage. You can set Scout to watch your inbox for urgent messages from specific people, your boss, your biggest client, your project sponsor. When something lands from them, Scout flags it. It can even draft a reply for your review. Not send it, just draft it so you can check and hit send. It can also identify emails that have been sitting without a response for too long and bring them to your attention. Daily briefs. Every morning, Scout can compile what happened while you were offline. Important emails that came in overnight, changes to shared documents, meeting notes from yesterday's late calls. It presents all of this in a single conversation, like a newspaper for your work life. You open Scout, and there's your morning brief, ready before you've even finished your coffee. Project tracking. This one is powerful. You can set Scout to watch for decisions that are overdue. Maybe you're waiting on approvals from 3 different people. Scout can track that and nudge the people who need to act. It can also generate weekly status updates automatically, pulling from Teams chats, SharePoint files, and email threads, and present them as a summary. No more manually compiling status reports. File management. Scout can clean up your downloads folder, organize local files, find documents that mention a specific topic across your entire workspace, your OneDrive, your SharePoint sites, your local folders. You say, find everything related to the Q3 budget review, and Scout searches everywhere and brings back the results. Now here's the example that made me stop and say, wow. One early user asked Scout to analyze 9 months of their work history, all their emails, their Teams chats, their documents, everything. Then they asked Scout to identify 5 things it could automate for them and estimate how much time it would save per year. Scout came back with a ranked list. It said, based on your patterns, here are the 5 tasks you do repeatedly that I can take over. Here's how much time each one would save you annually. The AI analyzed itself and found ways to automate its own workload. That's the kind of thing that changes how you think about work. Scout can also be taught skills. These are reusable recipes for common tasks. For example, you can create a travel booking skill. You teach it once, research flights, check your calendar for availability, block time, prepare an expense report. Next time you need to book a trip, you just say, book me a flight to Chicago next Tuesday, and Scout runs through the entire process. The skill remembers the steps, so you don't have to re-explain every time. But how does Scout actually pull all this off? It sounds almost like magic, an agent that can read your files, run commands on your PC, and drive a web browser. Let's go under the hood and see how it works. How Scout works under the hood. Here's the thing about Scout that surprises most people. The engine lives on your PC, not in the cloud. Scout is a desktop application that runs locally on your machine. When you ask it to do something, the processing happens on your computer. This matters for speed and for privacy. Your data doesn't have to travel to a remote server for every action. So how does it actually do the things we just talked about? 3 core capabilities. First, browser automation. Scout uses a tool called Playwright. This is a framework that lets Scout launch a browser, navigate to websites, log in, fill out forms, click buttons, and scrape data. When that early user asked Scout to draft a LinkedIn post and open it in the browser ready to publish, that's Playwright in action. Scout literally drove the browser, typed the content, and left it there for you to review. Second, command execution. Scout can run PowerShell commands on your Windows machine or shell commands on your Mac. This is how it interacts with your local file system. When it cleaned up that downloads folder and deleted 4 gigabytes of installer files, it ran PowerShell to find them, calculated which ones were safe to remove, and executed the deletion. You didn't need to know PowerShell existed. Scout just did it. But here's the critical piece that makes all of this safe. Every sensitive action is gated by an approvals model. When Scout wants to send an email, delete a file, open a browser, or run a command, it asks for permission. You see a prompt, I want to do this action. Allow once, allow for this session, or deny. You can also set always allow for actions you trust. Over time, as you build confidence, Scout needs fewer approvals. But it never acts without your knowledge on sensitive operations. Scout connects to Microsoft 365 through your work account using something called Work IQ. This is the same context engine that powers Copilot. It understands your emails, your calendar, your contacts, and your files. When Scout prepares a meeting brief, it's using Work IQ to find the relevant information across your entire Microsoft 365 workspace. Scout also supports MCP servers. Don't let the acronyms scare you. MCP is just a standard way to connect Scout to external tools, your CRM system, your database, your company's custom applications. If your organization uses Salesforce or a custom API, Scout can connect to those through MCP and pull information from them too. And because Scout has its own digital identity, every action is logged. Administrators can see exactly what Scout did, when it did it, and what data it accessed. This isn't a black box. It's auditable, trackable, and governable. This sounds incredible, right? But before you rush to install it, let's talk about who can actually use Scout right now and what it costs, because that's where the reality check comes in. Licensing and availability. Here's where we hit the reality check. Scout is not something you can download and start using today. It's in a private preview called Frontier, which is Microsoft's early access program for experimental products. Most people watching this won't have access to it yet. To even get into the preview, you need 3 things lined up. First, a Microsoft 365 Copilot license for your user account. That's the $30 per user per month license that gives you Copilot inside Word, Excel, and the rest. Second, you need a GitHub Copilot Business or Enterprise license. Business runs $9 per user per month, Enterprise is $39. And here's the important part. Scout's usage is billed through GitHub, not through Microsoft 365. That's a separate line item, a separate budget, a separate procurement process. Third, your organization has to be enrolled in the Frontier Preview program. Not every company qualifies. And even if you have all 3 of those, your IT admin still needs to configure Intune policies to allow Scout on your device. This was the biggest headache for early testers. Some spent hours getting this set up, creating the policy, adding themselves to it, getting their PC to accept it. If your organization doesn't use Intune yet, that's a whole separate project before you can even think about Scout. Then there's the cost model. Scout uses GitHub Copilot credits for every action it performs. Every task, every automation, every heartbeat, it consumes credits. Heavy usage adds up fast. You're not paying a flat monthly fee for unlimited Scout actions. You're paying for what you use, and the more you automate, the more it costs. General availability is expected in 2027. That's not next month. That's not even next year for most organizations. Today, Scout is mostly a signal of where Microsoft is heading, not a tool you can deploy across your company. So Scout isn't something you can use at work tomorrow, but that doesn't mean you should ignore it. Here's the bigger story. Why Scout matters for the future of work. Scout represents a major shift that's bigger than any single product. It's the move from AI as a tool you use to AI as an agent that works alongside you. That might sound like marketing speak, but the difference is real, and it changes everything about how we think about work. There are 3 trend Scout signals, and they're worth understanding even if you never deploy Scout itself. First, proactive workers. Future AI agents won't wait for instructions. They won't sit idle until you type a prompt. They'll monitor your work, anticipate what you need, and act on your behalf. Scout is the first example of this, but it won't be the last. Every major AI company is moving in this direction. Second, cross-platform autonomy. Scout shows that AI can now operate across cloud services, local files, and the web, not just inside a single app. It reads your Outlook, your Teams, your SharePoint, your local file system, your browser. This is fundamentally different from Copilot, which lives inside Word or Teams. Scout lives everywhere your work lives. Third, identity-based governance. By giving each agent its own digital identity, Microsoft enables fine-grained control and auditing. You can't do that with a tool that just acts as you. But when an agent has its own login, you can say, Scout can read my email but can't send it. Scout can view files but can't delete them. That level of control is what makes autonomous agents safe enough for enterprise use. Here's the big picture. Scout is the first of many autopilots Microsoft will release. The Copilot versus Autopilot distinction will become standard across the platform. You'll have your Copilot for on-demand help, and you'll have a team of autopilots handling recurring work in the background. That's why early adopters and IT leaders should start thinking about governance today, even if Scout isn't deployed yet. The identity model, the permission structures, the approval workflows you design now will apply to future agents. If you wait until Scout is generally available to start thinking about this stuff, you'll be playing catch-up. Microsoft is building a world where you don't just have one AI assistant. You have a team of specialized agents, each with its own role and permissions. One handles your inbox, another tracks your projects, a third manages your meetings. All of them work together, all of them are governed, and none of them wait for you to ask. So what should you actually do with this information? Here are my recommendations. What you should do right now. So what do you actually do with all of this? Here are 5 concrete actions, starting with the most important one. First, master what's already available. Copilot and Cowork are generally available today. They're not preview products. You can use them right now, and they can already handle a surprising amount of workflow automation. Spend time learning them thoroughly. Set up Cowork tasks. Build skills. Get comfortable with what AI can do in your daily work. The reason this matters is simple. Everything you learn on Copilot and Cowork transfers directly to Scout. The skills you build today will work tomorrow. The workflows you design now won't need to be redesigned later. Second, start the governance conversation. If your IT team hasn't discussed AI agent permissions, identity, and auditing, now is the time. Scout's arrival will force these decisions anyway. Better to make them on your own schedule than under pressure. Ask your IT team, who should be allowed to create autonomous agents? What actions should always require human approval? How do we audit what an agent does? These are questions every organization will need to answer. Getting ahead of them now saves headaches later. Third, get on the frontier waitlist if your organization qualifies. Even if you don't deploy Scout, Access gives you early visibility into the product roadmap, the documentation, and the community. You'll see what's coming before it arrives. You'll understand the direction Microsoft is heading, and you'll be in a position to plan instead of react. Fourth, experiment with skills. Start building reusable prompts and procedures in Copilot Cowork today. Skills are essentially recipes, a set of steps that accomplish a common task. When you build a skill in Cowork, it transfers to Scout when it launches. The work you do now isn't wasted, it's preparation. Fifth, talk to your licensing team. Scout requires GitHub Copilot Enterprise or Business, which is a separate budget from Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's a new line item, a new procurement process, a new conversation with finance. Understand the cost structure before it hits your procurement desk, not after. But here's the single highest leverage action you can take right now. Learn the difference between Copilot, Cowork, and Scout well enough to explain it to someone else. Most of the confusion in organizations comes from people not knowing which tool to use for which job. If you can be the person who clears that up, you become the go-to resource. And that's a good position to be in as these tools evolve. The one-line summary. So here's the one-line summary. Scout is Microsoft's first autopilot, an always-on agent that works proactively under its own identity across Microsoft 365, your local machine, and the web. It's not a ChatGPT-style helper that waits for you to type something. It's a background worker that watches, plans, and acts with your approval and under IT governance. Scout isn't ready for everyone today, but it shows exactly where AI is headed, from tools you use to agents that work with you. If you want to stay ahead, start understanding agent governance and workflows now. Subscribe for more plain English breakdowns of Microsoft's AI tools. And if you have questions about Scout, drop them in the comments.